No, I would really like to ask you to stop your conversations in the auditorium, and very good morning to you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Katerina Kashparova, and I'll be the moderator for today. And I shall be the moderator from here, from the rostrum, which is actually dedicated to the speakers. To start with, let me actually say one thing. Together with my friend on November 13th last year, we were sat in the pizza place, and she said, "Okay, let me actually let's do a conference on animal protection. That's my idea." And here we are today. This friend of mine is called Václava Brabcova, and I would like to thank you for actually pushing this idea forward, for organizing this together with Dr. Martina Načeradska, who will also have the pleasure of addressing you. So everything I dreamt of for a long, long time, that is actually to start a discussion about animal protection, is taking place as we speak, and we are here today, and I hope to come up with something. But the very first opening word will be provided by the Vice President of the Senate, Mrs. Milusia Horska, and I would like to kindly ask her to open our today's conference. And she had many dogs in the past from the shelters, and she told me she considers herself to be a dog mom. So please, Madam Vice President, I kindly ask you to open up our today's conference. So very good morning to you, dear lovers of animals. It is a great honor for me to open today's conference, which, as I can see, is not only the first one of its kind, but it is actually led and organized by a woman and ladies. And of course, as long as it's a female-led activity, I always like to support it. To start with, I would like to say that the dog I used to have is called Bobik, and I'm very proud of it, and I still fondly remember him, and I hope he's watching it from the skies. Ladies and gentlemen, very well welcome to you to the Senate of the Czech Republic. His founder, Albrecht of Waldstein, was actually a breeder. He was actually breeding farm animals as well as hobby animals, but it may well have been the case that the animals were enjoying more attention than the animals we are seeing today. Of course, at that time, there was no such thing as the legal protection of animals, and of course, this is something Mr. Burda will talk about in his contribution. But the question is, what sort of way have we actually managed to walk in the modern era, which has the animal protection in the law? Despite of the improving protection of animals, there are really excessive situations. We've seen the pictures from poppy farms, and where the animals are literally being enslaved and are actually used as a mean for profit because they are not receiving any care. The farms are only at the top of the iceberg, which is also very interesting for the media, but torture of animals and pets is something any reasonable person doesn't like. But we will not talk about only these issues, we will also talk about farming animals, to which we do not enjoy such a close personal relationship. And it is the farm animals who happen to live in very difficult conditions, which are hard to imagine, not only for the people from the cities, but also from the people who actually breed animals, such as farmers. I'm glad that today's conference has been prepared with a great level of attention to detail, and that it will elaborate on the description of the current status, which is not satisfactory at all, but it shall also deal with the proposals for specific solutions. To meet and to actually show pictures of tortured animals is, of course, interesting for the media, but we are all aware of the fact that the media interest will decrease very swiftly. Of course, the media is something very helpful when we actually want to draw the attention to specific cases, but what we are looking for is a systemic approach to the solution, which will be provided for in the legislation. The role of the government and the state in animal protection is irreplaceable, and it shall be reinforced in the future. For example, the veterinary authority, if it wants to maintain the currently valid legislation and requirements, can do anything. And this is not possible because the legislation that was actually meant to protect the animals cannot actually be cannot slow down the measures and the measures that need to be taken, and we must not allow it to be misused. Today we have a wide range of excellent experts from various fields at today's conference. I think that a very balanced an expert view is ensured, and I'm really pleased for that. And I'm also very grateful to the presence of foreign experts in animal protection who are actually participating in this conference, because when it comes to enforcing the law, we are lagging behind the European countries. It is definitely worth the effort to listen to the experience from abroad, and we shall try to get some experience and inspiration from functioning systems from abroad. To conclude, let me actually quote one world-renowned politician. The greatness of the nation and its moral development can be actually determined by the way it treats its animals. And I add how the country treats with the weak ones who are actually incapable of taking care of themselves, where animals, of course, fall into. So let me wish successful deliberations, and I just hope that the result of today's conference will be specific results which will be transposed into the legislation. So once again, very warm welcome to the Senate of the Parliament of the Czech Republic. Thank you very much, Vice President Miluše Horská, not only for opening the conference, but also for providing the auspices over the conference, and it is thanks to her and to her auspices we can actually be meeting here today. Now, let's take a look at how the animal protection activities have started in the Czech Republic. So Marcela Lund, the founder and president of the Foundation for Protection of Animals, will tell us about that. But before she starts, I would like to actually draw your attention to the fact that all the speakers can actually either speak from their place or from the rostrum. And I have two bells I will ring. This is the bell I will ring after 9th minute of the contribution, because every presenting individual has 10 minutes. And I will ring the second bell when he reaches or she reaches the 10 minutes limit. So I just hope, and sincerely do hope, that all the speakers will attend to the 10 minutes. But it's also about the journalists who are actually attending these meetings or this conference, and they have certain deadlines to meetings. And if we do not manage to actually keep the schedule, there will be no reference in the papers about this conference. And now I would like to ask Marcela Lund, who founded and who is still the president of the Foundation for Protection of Animals, to tell us the story. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. There's no need for me to actually introduce myself to you, because we've got the bells to keep track of the time, but I've been involved in animal protection since 1991. At the beginning of 1990s, the issues related to animal protection and the general awareness was very low. At that time, we only had two shelters in the Czech Republic, one of them in Prague, in Klukovice, and the other one in Brno, at Kocianka. In 1992, I met Jenny Cox, who represented VSPA, the World Organization for Protection of Animals, that actually incorporates approximately 1,000 organizations from 150 countries around the world. And it was Mrs. Cox who actually introduced me to RSPCA, which is the Royal Society for Protection of Animals, which is one of the historically longest functioning animal protection organizations in the world, who was actually founded already during the reign of Queen Victoria, who became the patron of this organization, of the RSPCA. In 1992, I became the consultative director of the VSPA for what was known as Czechoslovakia at that time, and in 1993, when the Czechoslovakia separated, I became the president in the Czech Republic. I've been in this honorary position for 10 years. Because I had a trading company in London, I had the opportunity to visit a number of organizations, RSPCA, VSPA, and other professional organizations dealing with animal protection, and I understood very quickly that what we need in the Czech Republic is an organization that could provide information to the general public to ensure animal protection in direct manner as well as in indirect manner. I was also one of the founders of the TV show Do You Want Me, when I actually met Marta Kubishova and Mr. Jiří Šebánek, who are the founding fathers. With the help of VSPA, I have founded back in 1994 the Foundation for Animal Protection together with the Czech Agriculture University in Prague, Agriculture University in Brno, and the Vet University in Brno. The patron and the honorary member of the supervisory board was named Mrs. Marta Kubishova. And I've been advised by the SPA, and they told me they do not do any work on behalf of the government bodies which are actually obligated to actually perform animal protection, but make use of the media and the general public to make sure these organizations are doing their job. It was not an easy way to go, but I can say it paid off, and our cooperation with the State Veterinary Authority is very good, and I would like to thank them for this cooperation. We have the Animal Protection Act valid in the Czech Republic, and of course there are many other legal standards that are actually clarifying animal protection, such as the Veterinary Act, Gamekeeping Act, Environmental Protection Act, Animal Protection Act, Act on the protection of freely living creatures. We have CITES, which is actually regulating the import and export of endangered species, as well as other generally valid standards, legal standards, such as the new civil code. When the Czech Republic joined the European Union, we had to actually comply with the requirements of the EU legislation as well. The Czech legislation and the EU legislation protects the animals insufficiently with respect to the needs the animals have and the respect they deserve. For some of the European countries, as well as all of the countries outside of Europe, the level of legal protection of animals is rather an optimistic vision. And I'm not talking about the third world countries only, but also about member states of the European community, be it the post-communist countries such as Romania, Bulgaria, and others, as well as other countries such as Greece, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and others. Despite of the level of the animal protection in the Czech Republic and other countries, there are still situations in which the legal regulations is not actually enforced and scrutinized, and if there are any breaches, there are only very mild punishments being awarded to the people who infringe with the law, although severe penalties are applicable. So we need to actually realize that unless we actually control and enforce the legislation, we cannot change the situation. Without the sufficient support of the government and self-government, as well as the support of general public, we cannot actually make things happen in real life. And now let me briefly introduce our Foundation for Protection of Animals as an NGO, which is actually enjoying the status of the foundation. Our mission is to continuously improve the relationship between the man and the animals and the environment, while helping and reducing the suffering and improving animal living conditions who are actually held captive, as well as for animals living in the environment, freely in the environment, as well as for farm animals. So this mission is based on our conviction that the animals are individuals that actually can feel, who deserve interest and care and protection by mankind. Now, our activities are based on the idea that every life, not only the human life, has its own irrepeatable value, and that there are mutual links for survival of all living organisms, as well as maintaining the balance of the ecosystem. The foundation is developing the following activities. We do actually award grants So basically, we actually distribute financial resources to shelters, rescue stations, as well as to NGOs that are active on the field of animal protection. Then we actually try to raise awareness and educational activities. We actually organize various events and discussion seminars. We try to disseminate press materials. We implement campaigns, and we try to also address the general public with the issue of animal protection through national media. We also have advisory activities. We actually provide advisory to general public, and we try to help them with specific cases of animal torture. Furthermore, we are actually involved in the legislative activities. We are trying to ensure that changes and amendments in the legislation are adopted on the national level as well as European levels. And we are actually also trying to comment on the existing legislation, improving the amendments, which will actually contribute to better protection of animals while improving their rights. And then, last but not least, we also cooperate both with domestic as well as with the protection activities from abroad as well as domestic ones. We are actually currently running the following projects. We operate the SOS line, telephone line. It is the Mayday line, telephone line, which is actually trying to attend to the specific cases of tortured animals and abandoned animals. Then we also have a campaign which actually is called Try to Help Us Fill the Bowls in Shelters, and this is actually a project within which we supply food, dog food, for the shelters. We have a program that supports the castration programs for cats as well as marking of cats in the Czech Republic. Then we have a project, a Dog in the City. We try to actually educate the general public about keeping dogs in cities. Okay, the bell rang, so I will have to make it shorter. So as far as this program is concerned, we are actually being helped by a company, Mars, which actually provides us with funding and dog food, and we are already a 6th annual term, and from 2009 until 2010 we have provided shelters with 165 of drive, pedigree and whiskers dog and cat food to the shelters, which is a great help and greatly appreciated. We also cooperate with international corporations such as VSP, RSPCA, Eurogroup. When it comes to legislation activities, we also support the activities for animal protection. Of course, feel free to actually look at our website, www.animalprotection.cz. To conclude, let me actually say that the animal protection in the Czech Republic has significantly improved over the past 20 years. There is a great level of general public awareness on this topic, and we can even say that the Czech Republic ranks among the best countries when it comes to animal protection out of all the post-communist countries. And when it comes to the EU rankings, we're actually one of the better ones. Thank you very much for your attention.
Já děkuji moc paní Marcele Lund nejenom za její diskusní příspěvek, ale vůbec za to všechno, co nadace na ochranu zvířat dělá pro útulky. Dělá to strašně moc. Ta zmínka o naplňte misky, to je opravdu jedna z mála akcí. Já osobně s nadací strašně dlouho dělám kastrační program a opravdu velice si vážím toho, co nadace dělá, a velice si osobně vážím paní Marcely Lund a bohužel jsem ji musela utnout, omlouvám se. Teď je na řadě, teď se podíváme do té historie ještě trochu dál. Na řadě je pan inženýr Zdeněk Burda, který nám poví něco více o historii a zvíře. Historie a zvíře, tak zní jeho příspěvek. Prosím, pane inženýre.
Omlouvám se. Ještě jednou tedy dobrý den, vážená paní místopředsedkyně, dámy a pánové. Já to vemu trochu zrychleným způsobem, abych se vyšel do toho časového limitu a musím upozornit, že mohl jsem zdůraznit jenom některé okamžiky, protože bych se sem jinak nevyšel. Takže toto je motto. Prosím číst zprava. A je to z Hammurapiho zákoníku. Znamená to ve volném překladě něco jako zavedl jsem pořádek, nebo zavedu pořádek. A tento Hammurapiho zákoník respektuje to, že ta pohoda je harmonie mezi tím zvířetem a prostředím. Tady potom máte snímek zůru, to je animal stela, na které už je uvedená komora veterinárních lékařů, která se ještě dělala na veterinární komoru ošetřující osly a ostatní zvířata, ale hlavně je tam už 10 zásad úplně dole na tom podstavci té 2 metry vysoké stély, které hovoří o ochraně hospodářských zvířat. Zvláštní postavení má ten osel, protože byl používán v podstatě k dopravě a to bylo prostě v Mesopotánii tenkrát velmi důležité. Je to tedy první v podstatě státní úprava, co znám, právu, která upravuje práva zvířat. A tady je jasné, že to nastartovalo okamžik, kdy stát se zhostil toho, že je tedy ochráncem zvířat.
Decided to manifest its duty to protect
to, co vidíte za mnou, je emancipační formule z římského práva. Ve starověkém Římě se takto zvířata prodávaly. Mimochodem zřizoval se i takto jen plnoprávných římských občanek, ale to bylo Justiniánským kodexem v 5. století našeho letopočtu zrušeno. Takže samozřejmě byly to zvířata významná, jako byly třeba koně nebo plemenný dobytek, případně výjimeční psy. Paní místopředsedkyni bych chtěl ukázat, že už ve středověku byla zvířata chráněna, tady dospěli dokonce k názoru, nebo je to ve spisku svatého Metoděje, kdy on myslel na ochranu hospodářských zvířat, protože už tenkrát pro ně zvíře znamenalo obrovskou materiální morální hodnotu.
Demonstrated a great material as well as moral value.
Tak je to krásné, tohleto opatřil pan exektor Večerek v Moravské knihovně. Už v roce 1855 jsme měli nařízení na ochranu zvířat proti týrání, který se týkal i vlastních zvířat, ale i zvířat, které nebyly toho vlastníka. Podepsal ho absolutista Bach. To by všechny překvapilo, protože už i v Rakousku-Uhersku tady byla ochrana zvířat. A samozřejmě jiná byla o hodně stručnější, byla samozřejmě úměrná nebo přiměřená prostě své době.
About the protection of animals.
V tomto světle nevychází ani dobře Velká Británie, kde až v roce 1876 královna Viktorie podepsala první zákon na ochranu zvířat proti týrání. To už je opravdu prostý svazek a opravdu si všímá všech kategorií, včetně zvířat laboratorních. Takže to je, měli veliké problémy, samozřejmě především s nákazami. Tak jak šel čas, tak já zase trhnu dějinami, dál a přenesu se, to je originál Sbírky zákonů a nařízení, je to vládní nařízení číslo 106, bohužel 27. března 1939. Jen o 12 dní minulo prostě první republiku a tento zákon byl, toto vládní nařízení bylo jedním z Benešových dekretů zrušeno. Bylo ještě dvakrát za války novelizováno a opravdu tady už se dá hovořit o tom, že to byl že to byl zákon na ochranu zvířat se vším všude.
A law for
Byl trošku
protection of
jinak koncipován,
animals
než je ten dnešní. Nicméně z hlediska
all the
zvířat
necessary
a jejich
elements.
pohody
It
nebo
slightly
welfare,
differs from the
chcete-li,
later ones,
to opravdu
but from the point of view of the protection
zahrnovalo
of
skoro
animals
všechno,
and their
včetně
welfare,
třeba zabíjení rybactví na
we find there all the
velmi úsměvné a
details.
docela zvláštní je pak přísaha inspektora,
special
který
is
měl kontrolovat welfare a
oath
pohodu
of an
zvířat v
inspector
chovech a všeobecně
who was
musel
to,
skutečně složit přísahu,
control
se dnes
the,
neděje, ačkoliv státní veterinární správa určitě
the
své
welfare
průkazky má.
of animals. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, such an oath.
I docela dobře jsme si počínali na
We were
mezinárodním
doing
poli,
quite well
když
also
druhá
in the
mezinárodní
international
úmluva,
arena,
kterou
the
nově
second
vzniklé Československo v roce 1919 podepsalo. Byla
that
úmluva o
the
ochraně
Czech Republic
užitečného půdstva
signed
zemědělství.
was
Jejími signatáři není nikdo jiný
about
než
the
Tomáš
protection
Garrigue
of
Masaryk
birds in
a Edvard Beneš,
agriculture,
jako
which was
druhou
signed by
zahraniční
Thomas
smlouvu
Garrigue Masaryk
sjednal,
and
podepsal
Edward
a
Beneš
pak ji
as
podal k
the
ratifikaci
Prime Minister
tehdejšímu
who
zákonodárnému
signed
sboru.
this agreement as the second
S
international
ochranou zvířat
agreement.
to bohužel po roce 48
After
šlo velmi rychle z
1948,
kopce.
the
Tady vidíte trestní zákon
protection
správní,
of
kde
animals,
paragraf 60 byla
got
trestní
worse
ochrana
and
zvířat.
worse.
Tady si všimněte těch 7 dnů, tehdy za prohřešky se udělovaly tresty
at that time,
podmíněné i nepodmíněné odnětí svobody v řádech dnů.
fines
Je to už v řádech roku,
meant
což vám tady určitě
only
paní kolegyně
days.
Slámová řekne.
for those who
Ano, vím.
breached the law.
Běžím. Nakonec ze všeho se prostě ochrana zvířat
In the
smrskla
end, the
jen na
protection
paragraf
of
7 v
animals,
zákoně 87
was,
z roku 1987 o veterinární péči, kdy
or had
prostě
shrunk
zvířata
only
nesmí být
to one
týrána.
article
Není nikde
which
napsáno,
says that
co
the
to se
animals
považuje
must
za
not be
týrání,
tortured.
jak
Nobody,
potrestat,
it
jakými
doesn't say
sazbami, jaké
what
přestupky,
is the
čili
torture,
naprostá degradace
how those
prostě
who breach the law
celé
should
věci.
be persecuted and what should be the punishment.
Pak přichází
Then
po roce
we,
89
and after
konečně změna.
1989,
Ta platí
we
dodnes.
introduced the
Za sebou ten
change,
zákonník
which
má
is still
8 nebo 9
in
novel, čili
force.
dneska
It's
už je
been 9 or 10
velmi
times
propracován.
amended.
Samozřejmě jsou tam věci, které
Naturally,
chybí. A
there are
jsou
still
tady
some
i věci,
omissions,
které samozřejmě
and
mají
there
vztah k
are
jiným právním
things
normám
that
a
are related to
samozřejmě
other legal
i
norms
prostě k mezinárodnímu právu, protože jsme
international
součástí
law
Evropské unie.
because we are part of the EU.
Takže tady ještě ukázka
Here, an
mezinárodních smluv,
example
které
of
Česká
international
republika
agreements
podepsala a
that the
ratifikovala
Czech
v rámci Rady
Republic
Evropy.
signed
Dohromady
and
těch smluv je
ratified
5.
as a
Já
part
jsem
of
si
the
tady
EU. There
dovolil
are 5
jenom
of
2
them.
věty, které nás
I
zajímají.
have picked up 2 of them which might be of interest to us. And then, of
Je
course,
tady Evropská unie,
there is
ochrana zvířat v
EU,
Evropské
the
unii
protection
se
of
řídí tím článkem
animals in
13
EU, which is
smlouvy o
governed by
Evropě,
Article
znění Lisabonského
13
protokolu
of
a
the
jasně dává, co a jak se má upravit v rámci
Treaty of
národních
Europe,
předpisů.
which
Samozřejmě
says
kolega Poc tady
what
potom ještě
should-
určitě zmíní
how it
akční
should
programy Evropské unie v rámci dobrých životních podmínek
incorporated
zvířat.
in the national legislation.
Další věci, které se k tomu velmi vztahují, je tady sice určitý rozpor, ale byl mi zrovna před konferencí trošku objasněn a vysvětlen. Je to jednak trestní zákoník, kde je zvíře, i když je to asi skutečně jenom pomocné, považováno za věc. Potom nový občanský zákoník, bude mít tady kolega Kaucký, kde zvíře naopak životvor. Takže úplně to není pravda, že zvíře už vůbec nikdy není a nebude věcí. Je to totiž otázka lidského myšlení a rozumu.
Of course, it is a matter of human thinking, not a matter of an act.
Tak se rozloučím společně se svým psem, že si na to s Cezarem, který už bohužel taky není, takže si na to dohlídneme. Děkuji za pozornost.
Thank you very much for attention.
Děkuji moc panu inženýru
I'd like to
Bordovi
thank
i za to,
Engineer
že dodržel
Borda
úplně perfektně
for
čas.
his presentation as well as for keeping up
teď
with the
prosím
time limit.
pana
And now I would
inženýra
like to
Milana
kindly ask
Kautského,
Mr. Milan
kterého
Kautsky,
taky znám strašnou spoustu let, je to
whom
prostě
I
ochránce
have known
zvířat
for a number of years.
tělem i
He's an animal
duší a
protector
poví nám
by heart and
něco
soul, and he will tell us more about
o pohledu na zvíře
about
dle
the
nového občanského
definition
zákoníku.
of an
Doufám
animal
aspoň.
according to the
Takže,
newly
prosím.
enacted civil
A, pardon,
code. The
ještě jenom
floor is yours.
technická
And a
poznámka.
technical remark.
Kdo připravte se
Those
pomalu
of
na
you-
diskusi, která bude na konci každého bloku. Jenom
Well,
vás chci
you
moc
better get ready
poprosit,
for the
jsme tu
discussion
proto,
which will follow
abychom-
after or at the end of
opravdu
each
vymysleli
part of the
řešení, abychom
conference.
k
And
něčemu
we are
dospěli.
here actually
Například
to
včera
come up
jsme
with some
měli
solutions.
kulatý
Yesterday
stůl,
we held a
který
round
předcházel
table
dnešní
which
konferenci,
preceded
na
today's
které se řekla
conference.
spousta důležitých věcí a
There were
mimo
many
jiné,
things mentioned
tam
at the
nadace na
round
ochranu
table,
zvířat
and
společně s
among others, the
ministerstvem spravedlnosti se
Animal
domluvila už na
Protection
nějakých
League
schůzkách na tom,
Foundation
že
have
budou
agreed on
hledat
meetings with the
možnosti,
Ministry
jak
of
vylepšit
Justice, and
tu
they have already
legislativu a
agreed
podobně.
on
Takže prosím, o
searching
toto nám tady
for
jde,
the
abychom
options
našli
when it
řešení,
comes
ne
to
abychom si
improving
tady,
the legislation
promiňte
in
mi
the area of
výraz,
animal protection.
vzájemně
So
nadávali
we
za
are here
něco
to
a
find
někoho
some
za
solutions.
něco
We are not
potahovali
here
a
actually
podobně.
to
Pojďme
blame
hledat
each other,
řešení.
to
A kdo se
argue.
chcete
Let's
přihlásit do
just
diskuse,
try to look
tamhle
for
vpravo
solutions.
na stolu,
Those of you who would
na
like to
stole
actually
jsou tyto
discuss
papírky,
something
které prosím
in the
vyplňte a
corner over
přineste
there
je
on the
buď
table,
sem
there
ke
are
mně,
papers
anebo
which you
tamhle
can
paní
fill
Brabcové,
in,
která sedí
and you
skromně
can
úplně
actually
v
either
rušku,
bring it
říkám to
here
špatně, Wendy,
to
nebo-
me or
no,
bring
jo,
it to
tak,
Mrs.
vážně si, že
Vrabcová,
ne, ale
who's
jo.
actually sat
Ale
over
jestli
there in the
chcete,
corner,
přineste to sem ke mně,
and you can
určitě
actually
si to
present
vymyslete.
those papers
A
or those
samozřejmě, že se můžete přihlásit do diskuse i bez toho
registration
papírku, ale
marks.
je
But
to
of course you can
jistější,
discuss
protože
without
pokud se
the
nemýlím,
official written
tak
request,
budeme
but it will be more
papírky brát
practical
přednostně do
because of
diskuze, je to
course
tak. Je to tak.
the questions
Takže
asked in
tolik
writing
diskuzi
will
a
be
teď už
answered
prosím
as a
Milana, aby
priority.
nám
So
řekl
now I'd like
o
to
novém
ask
občanském
Mr.
zákoníku.
Kautsky to tell us more about
Dobrý den.
new civil code.
Předmětem mého příspěvku je
So
nový
good morning to
občanský
you.
zákoník.
I would like to talk about the new
Platí
civil
od
code, which
1. ledna
is
letošního roku,
valid
přinesl
since January
spoustu
1st this
změn,
year. It has generated a number of
vzhledem k
changes.
omezenému času
With
se tady
respect
budu
to
moc
the
zabývat
time
jenom
limit I have been
stručně
provided
ještě k tomu
with, I will
pár
be very
drobnostma.
brief with my
Zvíře je
description of
nově
the civil code.
definováno
So
jako
the
živý
animal is
tvor.
defined as a living creature in the
Ustanovení
civil
o
code.
věcech se na něj použijí
The
pouze v
provision
rozsahu,
on
pokud to
intangible things
nebude
is only used
odporovat
in the extent if it
jeho povaze živého tvora.
contradicts the characteristic features of the living creature. The problem is
co se použije, co
that
se
the
nepoužije,
interpretation of what
bude
can be
vyloženě
used and what
subjektivní
cannot be
podle
used will
konkrétního
be
příkladu,
very subjective
případu a
depending
konkrétního
on
člověka.
the case and on
Ještě
the person.
závažnější asi
What is even
je,
more
že
serious
zvíře
is the
není
fact that
definováno
the animal
biologicky.
is not defined in a biological way.
Ustanovení
So
ze
the
zákona na
provision
ochranu zvířat bohužel
in the Animal Protection Act,
v občanském zákoníku
unfortunately,
neplatí.
is not valid within the
Čeština nám
new
taky moc
civil
nepomůže,
code. The
protože
Czech language doesn't help us a
zvířetem
lot
se z
because the
obratlovců rozumí
animal
převážně savec, tak
are
obojživelník,
referred to
plas a
as
ryba jsou taky
mammals,
obratlovci, ale
reptiles,
čeština je
birds,
zná
etc.
pod jinými pojmy,
But the Czech
čili, že
also
když to-
uses different
když se
notions for
některému
these type of
právníkovi to
animals
bude
or
v
these
určitém
species of
případu hodit,
animals. So
může,
provided the lawyer will be
být
skilled enough,
problém i kvůli
there could be a
hmyzu.
problem, especially with respect to insects, for example.
Příkladem paragrafu, který
One of the
nemá
example
jednoznačný
of
výklad,
articles
je
that is
například
not very
krajní
clear
nouze.
is the event
Většinový
of
výklad je, že
utmost
záchrana zvířete bude
urgency.
prováděna bez ohledu na škodu. Ale bohužel v tom se neshodli ani všichni
It was
navrhovatelé
difficult to
zákona,
find
kteří
a
to
consensus.
zpracovali.
It was actually even
Například
discussed by
doktor
the
Tegel
individuals who
prohlásil
proposed
na
this
semináři v Poslanecké
paragraph,
sněmovně
and
k
Dr.
občanskému
Tegel,
zákoníku,
when they were
že by
discussing the
takový
new civil
přístup
code in
považoval za
the
protiústavní
Chamber of
a
Deputies,
že vždy bude muset být porovnávat
this
cena
was actually
zvířete
a illegal
s výší
approach,
škody
and it will always
způsobenou
be
jeho
necessary to
záchranou.
compare
Takže
the price of
neočekávejte, že
the
policie bude
animal
bez
with
problémů
respect to the
zachraňovat
damage caused
zvířata.
by
Vždy
the
bude
damage caused.
záležet, jak konkrétní policista vyhodnotí
It will be very much
fatálnost
dependent on
situace
how
a
the
ještě
policeman
více
will actually
na
assess the
zkušenostech
situation,
jeho
the fatality
kolegů,
of the
případně jeho
situation,
osobních.
and it will be very much dependent on the experience of his colleagues and his own personal experience. The discovery of an animal, Article 1051 stipulates that you cannot keep anything you will find, and you cannot make it your own. Article 1058 states, defines the rescue of an animal. I do apologize.
U něhož je zjevné, že má vlastníka. Občanský zákoník totiž nechrání zvířata jako taková, ale chrání pouze vlastnické právo původního vlastníka.
That actually protects the ownership rights of the original owner. This is not a problem with respect to dogs, because the presumption is that each dog had an owner before. But the problem is with domesticated animals that are living actually freely without having a specific owner. That the major problem is with the cats.
V podstatě tato zvířata v podstatě víceméně vypadla ze zákona.
And these animals have been left out from the act, and not even the Ministry of Agriculture is not actually capable of allocating these animals according to the currently valid legislation. The only Article 13 B of the Animal Protection Act is actually, can be used for this. But it only states that the municipality can take some measures to regulate the population. The municipalities are not actually interested in cats at all, and they actually try to leave out the work for the voluntary organizations and the Ministry of Agriculture, although we've been actually welcomed at the respective department, which was actually which is in charge of regulating the population of stray cats. But the problem was to actually implement the regulation in practice, because it generates enormous costs of castration and registration, and we have not been provided with the funding because the Animal Protection Department does not award any funding, but the Ministry of Agriculture provided funding for the shooting club, for the summer shooting club, and presentation of a film for gamekeeping and other things. So I think this is a clear indication of what the Ministry of Agriculture is supporting with respect to animals that are actually suffering in fatal conditions. Article 2 Section 2 of Article 1058 says that whoever actually is taking care of the animal has to actually take proper care, but in the extensive interpretation it is the municipality that is responsible for the animal, because it is the municipality who is actually taking care of it, and the municipality decides where the animal is being put to and who will take care of it. Small municipalities and villages try to proceed in a situation that in better cases they would actually move the animal outside of their city limits, but in the worst case they eliminate the animals with the help of gamekeepers, or if they do have a gun they actually shoot the animals themselves. So in any case I would like to recommend to actually request a writing confirmation of the handover of the animal found to the representative of the municipalities, and try to procure pictures today with the mobile phones. It should not be a problem. Article 1059 determines the terms for protection of the animal, so it's 2 months following the discovery of the animal, provided the original owner will be interested to acquire the animal back, but this will be very rare. And there is also the second limit of 4 months, and that is in case the animal is put into the animal shelter. The problem is that there is no definition of an animal shelter. It is not defined, and this is not something I will elaborate on, because it will be Mrs. Klasnová who will talk about the issues with animal shelters in the next presentation. I've got 4 minutes left, that's good. So this is a brief description of the terms. We have 2-month protective term and a 4-month protective term. And now let me say what happens to the animal that is actually handed over by the municipality to somebody else who is not the founder or who operates the facility which is not a shelter, well, then it has to be governed by the law applicable to things, to immaterial things, so the ownership right can be transferred only after 3 years. So in this list you can see that there is a sheer difference, a big difference between the protective terms. 2 months and 4 months for specific cases described in the currently valid legislation for hobby pets, and 3 years for farm animals.
A jak se na tyto lhůty kouká náš základní právní předpis?
What about our fundamental legal regulation and its view on these terms, protective terms? And this is the actually constitution of the Czech Republic, and the constitution contains the list of fundamental freedoms. Article 3 guarantees rights to all of them irrespective of property, because the ownership of an animal is ownership of a thing. Nobody can be actually deprived of possession of the property, and Article 4 says that in every case the same approach should apply. So you can actually see that the civil code is not actually meeting up with the expectations and requirements of the constitution. So there are no minor details and differences, but there are actually major differences between the individual protection terms. So this is something that we have tried to attend to and correct. Dr. Glasnova has prepared an amendment. Unfortunately, the reaction in the parliament was literally none. To defend her, I have to say that she was actually trying to get the alibi, but she also tried to get the support for this amendment. But with the fall of the government last year, everything has ended. So the next problem I'd like to refer to is, or actually there's one more thing I wanted to say.
Na tom semináři, na veřejném slyšení v Poslanecké sněmovně k občanskému zákoníku minulý dotaz náměstek Pospíšila
Deputy Minister Dr. Korbel told me, or replied to my question, that yes, he does agree that in case of the animal, the protection of ownership rights is significantly decreased, but on the other hand it is compensated for by the fact that the ownership can be regained by a different person. So if I would be logical, so it's not a problem to legalize a theft, and the one who's been actually robbed could have a possibility to actually acquire his animal back rightfully. And I think that this was also the case of the presidential pardon, the last one we have seen. There's also one more problem I'd like to refer to. The municipality is obliged to actually announce the discovery of a lost dog or animal, but it is not specified how it shall be done, and to actually search for an animal is a problem, so the solution could be a centralized register for animals as well as chipping the animals. Thank you very much for your attention.
Děkuji velice panu inženýru Kautskému. Hovořil tady o ministerstvu zemědělství, tak musím za organizátory říct, že ministerstvo zemědělství neprojevilo zájem, byli osloveni, byli pozváni, neúčastní se a nebyli přítomni ani včera na tom kulatém stolu, v podstatě jako jediní ze všech pozvaných. Nejsou tady a byli pozváni. Teď ještě více se zaměříme na zákon a zvíře a konkrétně na tematiku útulku a centrální evidence, je to tak? Hovořit bude paní doktorka Kateřina Klasnová, kterou znáte z parlamentu, byla místopředsedkyní sněmovny. Nyní je zastupitelkou na Praze 1 a já musím říct, že je to úžasný člověk, co se týká ochrany zvířat. A nejenom ochrany zvířat, protože myslím, že jako jediná, nebo určitě jedna z mála, opravdu pravidelně dávala ze svého platu každý měsíc peníze na charitu, dávala i na kočky, na útulky a jestli se nemýlím, tak celková suma činí 3 miliony korun za celou dobu.
To jste přehnala, Kateřino,
milion. Vím, že to šlo do milionu, ale já si myslím, že spíš jste třeba to nesečetla všechno. Takže moc děkuju za to, co děláte pro kočky pro zvířata, pro kočičí útulky, pro psí útulky a vůbec pro všechny, kdo potřebují pomoc. A nyní vás prosím, abyste nám řekla více o útulcích a o centrální evidenci. Děkuji.
Tak já děkuji za slovo, vážené dámy, vážení pánové. Jsou to na měsíc přesně 2 roky, kdy jsem v Poslanecké sněmovně předkládala několik pozměňovacích návrhů k novele zákona o ochraně zvířat proti týrání. Neprošly a pokud je mi známo, tak ani současní zákonodárci z dolní komory žádnou komplexní a koncepční změnu v této oblasti prioritně nepřipravují. A právě proto zde dnes stojím stejně jako ostatní řečníci a domnívám se, že výsledkem této konference by nemělo být, že si pouze popovídáme o stále aktuální problematice ochrany zvířat v České republice, ale že se zákonodárci pokusí uvést v život adekvátní legislativní řešení. A některé náměty bych zde ráda uvedla. První téma, o kterém bych měla hovořit, je problematika postavení útulků. V České republice neexistuje oficiální evidence útulků, stejně jako český právní řád nedefinuje přesně pojem útulek. Obecně by útulek měl být zařízením, které pečuje o opuštěná domácí zvířata profesionálním způsobem. Zařízení musí splňovat veškeré podmínky stanovené platnými právními předpisy, včetně spolupráce s orgány státního veterinárního dozoru. Tolik teorie, ovšem jaká je realita. Státní veterinární správa nemůže řadu zařízení kontrolovat a metodický návod státní veterinární správy v této oblasti byl právě z důvodu nevymahatelnosti zrušen. Zařízení, které není jakoukoliv přímo zpovodováno stavebním úřadem, je totiž státní veterinární správa nucena považovat za zájmový chov, i když vykazuje znaky útulku. Takový zařízení pak kontroluje pouze očkování, protože zákon nic jiného neumožňuje. To zneužívají různé subjekty a o zvířata se řádně nestarají. Desítky zvířat lze prohlásit za zájmový chov, nevede se evidence a zvířata v podstatě slouží jako zdroj obživy, kde se doslova parazituje na darech, které jsou určeny pro útulek. Tyto problémy jsou především u provozované soukromými, míněno především fyzickými osobami. Ty jsou asi nejproblematičtější z hlediska financí a změny prokazatelnosti útulkové činnosti v případě kontroly.
Problems are then quite evident. A big number of the number of shelters is not known in this country.
Nemusí to být tedy seznam ani úplný. Podle nadace na ochranu
According to the Foundation for the Protection of Animals, last year we had 139 shelters, yet if we take into account also those that are considered hobby centers, then the number will be much higher. There are 4 laws that deal with these shelters.
Platné právní předpisy, jimiž by se Česká republika měla řídit, existují. Je to Evropská dohoda o ochraně zvířat v zájmovém chovu, publikovaná pod číslem 19/2000 sbírky, která stanoví definici pojmu útulek pro zvířata. Smlouva Rady Evropy je součástí českého právního řádu, ale bylo by na místě, kdyby existovala definice útulku přímo v české legislativě. Zákonodárci mohou z definice vycházet,
may take into account the European definition of shelter, but they don't have the duty to define the shelter in the Czech legislation in the same way. I believe it should be good if all the premises that carry out this type of activity were considered shelters. And there should be also an official register of shelters that comply with the legal
podle mého názoru pomohlo zavedení centrální evidence zvířat v zájmových chovech, což je druhé téma, o kterém dnes pohovořím, pakliže to stihnu. Podle některých odhadů by zavedení celonárodního registru snížilo stavy zvířat v útulcích až o polovinu. Já nevím, nedokážu posoudit, jestli to číslo nebo ty odhady jsou reálné, ale každopádně osobně jsem zastáncem centrálního registru minimálně právě. Dnes je čekováno závislé, jak je známo, na vyhlášce a vůli jednotlivých obcí. now
required only by individual communities and municipalities. But many owners of the dogs don't know that they should actually record or register a dog with a chip, and then the chip doesn't fulfill the role it should. The Czech Parliament tried only once to introduce the central register, but it failed because of the lack of financing. Our neighbors in Slovakia got a bit further when in 2012 the already approved amendment about the veterinary care came into force. The register would apply to dogs, cats, and some other animals. We ought to say that this proposal never came into existence, and the amendment was also abolished. Apparently, the reason was that it was financially too demanding. There are several arguments why the shelters and central register of animals are should be required. First, it would give legal certainty to the communities, because the communities are to take care of the animals that get lost or stray in their area. The second argument is the economy of such changes, because it should save money. Because, for example, the communities might find the owners of the animals and require them to pay for the care that the community provided. And the third argument is effectiveness. In this, it means that the organization of animal care would be more effective. We have the Chamber of the Vets and the State Veterinary Administration and the Ministry of Agriculture that should actually plead for this legislative activity. I believe we can find a solution which would not be too demanding for the government. Already today, every community has their own register for the purpose of fees.
Zápis psa a číslo čipu do centrálního registru by měl na starosti veterinář, podobně jako v tom slovenském modelu, o kterém jsem hovořila. Zároveň oznámení o čipování zaslal obci do trvalého bydliště majitel psa. Registr by tak mohl obsahovat tři údaje.
Always announced to the community, and all these data could then
evidence údajů by pak nepodléhala ochraně dat z hlediska zákona na ochranu osobních údajů a čistě teoreticky říkám, že to je věc, která se překvapení by mohlo lézt ve private i soukromí subjekt. Jakkoliv by evidence podle mě měla podléhat dozoru ministerstva zemědělství. Detaily tohoto postupu, jak jsem řekla, nejsou nic dogmatického, je to pouze určitý
details are not dogmatic, it is just a proposal, one of the possible models. Of course, you might look for better, maybe even cheaper solutions, but we have to look for them. We ought to start working on the solution of the problems. The state behaves in this case as a doctor who will only give the patient analgesics and will not try to find the cause of the pain. So we believe that the definition of shelters, the mandatory chips should be the priority. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Klasnová, and your Popis Beruška. And before, a very well-known lawyer and animal protection activist, Dr. Klára Slamová, gets ready for her presentation. You can actually register for the discussion through the ballots you will find on the table. So please register. And those of you who want to discuss, and in order to be able to find a solution, try to actually add to your question, what should be the solution in one sentence? What do you think is the thing we need to do to improve animal protection, animal care? How can we help the animals? We are not here to chat, as already indicated, but we are here to find a solution to make sure this conference does have a message to be communicated. Klára Slamová, probably no need to introduce her. We've known each other for a long, long time, and I know she's doing a lot for the animals. She's protecting animals. She's an owner of a dog as well, of course. But she does not only take good care of her dog, but she also takes or supports various animal shelters. So, and her contribution is titled "Cruelty to Animals in Penal Code." So, Dr. Slamová, the floor is yours. So, very good morning to you. Because I'm actually very phobic of the bell, I was not informed about. And when Katarzyna told me, I had to even shorten my presentation. I might be even going really fast through my presentation, so I do apologize in advance. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to actually address you. I will be very critical in my contribution. I will be very critical towards those who are supposed to be here but who are not here. It is critical to those who have the possibility and who are obliged to do something, either in the field of legislation or on making use of the current legislation. So I shall not actually refer to all the authorities that are actually responsible for animal protection and what their authorities are and responsibilities are. I shall also not talk about what is considered to be cruelty to animals, or what is actually the criminal act of cruelty to animals. We should all read it, and we should actually read it following the basic premise that you need to know the law. And every person knows what's good and what is not good. So let me just emphasize the basic thesis we should actually follow. In one of the acts from 1987 on veterinary care, the animal protection has been clearly defined in Article 6, which said that the animals must not be subject to cruelty. This is a very specific statement. Currently, we consider to be the most important act, the Act 246 from 1992 collection on the protection of animals against cruelty. And the preamble clearly states the animals are living creatures, just like human creatures, who actually feel suffering, and therefore they deserve the care and protection of the mankind. Those who are actually meant to protect the weaker ones are the strong ones. That means us, the people, because the animals can barely actually defend themselves against any illegal activities from the side of mankind. So what shall we focus at, in my opinion, is the role of the people who are actually working in the authorities, who are obliged to actually ensure animal protection and who are obliged to make sure the law is adhered to. It is very sad to remind ourselves that the journalists are actually oftentimes stepping into the process, and they have to actually draw the attention to the cruel cases. There are many experiences from the past when the criminal proceedings were only started following the media contributions. Let's try to recall the events when the animal cruelty cases were only publicized by media and the police attended to these cases, and these were also the cases where not only the vet authorities have been informed, but also the police were informed by the people who tried to actually draw their attention to illegal activities, and the police only started to act after the cases have been put into the media and communicated in the media. And the culprits would not be actually penalized if there was no contribution by the media. And I ask why? Because the currently valid legislation is clear in the definition what is a criminal act. So I'm asking why the people in these authorities started to act only after these matters and these projects were communicated to the community or to the general public. So we need to slow down a little bit because it's really difficult to actually follow up with translation. And I do apologize to the interpreters. Also, I was not aware of what this will cause. So let me just actually give Dr. Slamova about 2 minutes ago, 2 minutes more in the presentation, just to make sure it is communicated. So I'm asking why the police did not act, and they only acted after it was communicated by the media. And this is something which is clearly unacceptable for me. I would like to contribute to making sure that all the organizations perform their obligations irrespective of whether or not the cases of animal cruelty is communicated by the media. The police has to act, the veterinary authorities should act, and they should follow every allegation on